Okay. Yesterday, I talked about dementia, what it is, what it means, the fact that it's not a diagnosis in and of itself. It's a general term for other conditions like Alzheimer's and, you know, any kind of condition that impacts your life and the way you live it. Um, and how your brain really works. So if it affects like the whole of your brain or even part of your brain and can have a significant impact on how you live, you know, especially with things like Alzheimer's, and I even found it in things like Parkinson's and things like that. It can have, you could even get a diagnosis of dementia, you know, as it deteriorates and as it progresses. And it's a general kind of term. It's a neurological disease. So if you haven't watched part one, I strongly suggest you go and watch it. Yesterday I started talking about the early warning signs of this condition. And today I'm going to keep moving forward on that because there is a lot to get through. And these are just the basic facts of dementia. I'm not going into all the rest of it. I'll be here forever. Okay. So, there are other warning signs when it comes to dementia. I found 10 actual basic warning signs. Okay, and we're going to start with those. Okay, before we even get to things like symptoms, which, to be fair, yeah. Okay, so when we're talking about warning signs of dementia, we're looking at things like memory loss. And that memory loss is things like your memory getting worse. Things like to the point where you're struggling to remember basic tasks. Okay. And then things like difficulty with your tasks. So things like preparing your meals. So you'll get. So I mean that's just one example. So you're everybody knows how to prepare a meal. We know what we're doing. On the odd occasion, everybody does it. We forget that the oven's on, or we get distracted and we'll burn something. Okay, it happens to everybody. That's normal. But if you not only forget the oven's on to the point where you're burning things on a daily basis, you then start forgetting about the time of day. So you start preparing your dinner and then you forget you're doing it. So something else comes up, the phone rings, you stop what you're doing, and then you actually forget that you've been doing. Once the phone call ends, most people will go back to preparing dinner, whereas somebody with dementia or the starts of dementia will forget that they've even been preparing for their dinner. It will slip their mind completely. So the prep work will be sitting out in the kitchen until the next time they go into the kitchen. Which could be 15 minutes, 10 minutes, or even could be a couple of hours with some people. You just don't know. Until they decide to get themselves a cup of tea. And that will become a normal thing. They'll just constantly forget. Either they'll forget to make it, they'll forget they're prepping it, or even to the point where burning their food will become a constant thing. So there'll be a lot of things like that, and it won't just happen around food. That's just one example. It'll happen with everything. So they'll start forgetting appointments, they'll start forgetting everything. It will become a daily thing. So they'll forget to brush their teeth, they'll forget whether or not they won't remember whether or not they've washed, they will forget to put the washing machine on, they'll forget all sorts and everything. These things will become a normal sort of everyday occurrence for them. you know, they're the kind of things you need to be looking at. Okay, so then we've got things like disorientation. Now, when we're looking at disorientation, we're looking at things like they're getting lost. And we're not just thinking, oh yeah, they've gotten lost in some place new. No, they're getting lost walking or driving to their local supermarket, a place they've gone to a million times, and all of a sudden they can't remember how to get there. You know, it's like they've never been there before. You know, that, you know, and if they do manage to get there, they might get confused, you know, or even to the point where they get lost on their way home from the supermarket. They can't remember where they live, you know, or how to get home, you know, the direction they've got to take to get home. They remember where they live, they just don't know how to get there, you know, and they'll start panicking, you know, so we'll start seeing behaviour like that, or even confusion, and seeing them go back into their past. That happens a lot. So again, we'll see them sort of get confused. So even if they sort of, let's say, and we will use the sort of supermarket thing, so they get to the supermarket, they'll start their shopping, and all of a sudden they'll stop and they'll freak out because they have no idea why they are, what they're doing there, why they're doing their shopping, and what the fuck is going on with them. They'll just have no idea what on earth is going on. You know, they're, you know, and it happens. It does happen a lot. There'll be a lot of people around them. It might start really small, where they'll figure it out eventually, and you know, they'll just carry on and, you know, get embarrassed. But it will move up to bigger and bigger things, and it always does move to bigger and bigger things. But there will be points where they'll start going back into their life. So they'll get to a point in the day where, let's say, they're supposed to be doing things, 1 minute they're, I don't know, cleaning the house or meeting a friend for coffee, and the next minute they're freaking out because instead of having a fun and meeting their friend for coffee, they're freaking out because look at the time, they're supposed to be somewhere else. You know, and they're talking about places and times that they no longer exist or no longer are necessary because, you know, the kids are all grown up and they don't need to go and pick them up from school because, one, you know, the kids are like adults now, and, you know, so you don't need to pick your kids up from school, and oh dear, look, you don't need to be there anymore, and, or, you know, your husband's doesn't need you to go and fix his dinner for you anymore, or your wife doesn't need you to fix dinner for her anymore because, you know, they're at home and they're doing it, or they're at work and they're fine, and something else is happening and it's all good. You know, there's, you know, or even for those who have lost their partner and they automatically go back to thinking that they should be at home taking care of their partners because that's what they've always done, and all of a sudden they've forgotten that their partner's gone, and that at this set time they should be making their dinner, or, you know, fixing their lunch, or doing something. They've always done it, and they're talking about them as if they're actually still there. You know, talking about specific times and dates and things that you've always done as if they're already in that time and space. You know, and then when somebody says something, they're kind of like, oh yeah, I knew that, you know, as if, you know, that never happened, you know. It must be really freaky. I don't think I could live like that. I don't live like that. It must be kind of scary to kind of go through that kind of motion. Sounds awake. You know, could never imagine the kind of fear that kind of provokes in somebody who ends up living like that, goes through points and moments like that. I mean, to start off feeling embarrassed to then being afraid in your own head, it must be horrible. Because once we get past all of that, we then get things like language problems. So not only do they find it difficult to find words, but they then start struggling to put sentences together, or they might even start using like obscene languages, instead of like normal language, because they can't find anything else to say. And they might even struggle to understand what other people are saying. Now, to a point, I understand this completely. With my FND, I have moments where I struggle to find words that I need, and I spend a long time trying to describe the word that I'm trying to say. And it gets really, really frustrating, because I know what I mean and I know what I'm trying to say, but while I'm trying to explain myself, nothing I'm saying makes any sense to anybody, and everyone's looking at me like I'm stupid. And I'm not. And I'm sitting here going, this makes no sense. Why am I saying any of this? Because in my head it all makes sense, and what I'm saying doesn't. And I'm like, it's frustrating and it's horrible. And it's one thing to not remember the word that you're trying to say, and sometimes you can explain that word so that everybody understands it, and there are moments where you can't. And so when you're trying to explain something to somebody, and in your head it all makes perfect sense, and as it comes out of your mouth, everything you say sounds ridiculous, makes no sense, and everyone looks at you like you're an absolute idiot, because nobody has any clue what you're saying. And it's embarrassing and it's frustrating, and you're sitting there going, I know what I'm talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. It does make sense. I promise it makes sense. I know what I'm talking about. I do. I promise. It's horrible. It is. Again, they'll also find there are changes in their abstract thinking. And this will relate to their finances and things like that. So this will be things like some people are really good at sorting out their money and their bills and things like that. And then they might get to a point, so people with dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like that could get to a point where they'll struggle to understand the numbers. So figuring out their bills or figuring out any kind of finances in general will become really difficult to them. So then we get to things like poor judgment. And poor judgment is, we all understand the term poor judgment. And it can be just to the point of wearing really inappropriate clothes outside. So it's freezing cold and you're in shorts and t-shirt, sandals, and outside freezing your backside off, Some people, and if they're, and there can be countless other things that they'll show poor judgment on. So they'll forget to look both ways and crossing the road, so they'll forget things like basic safety. So then we get to things like poor spatial skills. Now, we all know as we all grow up, our spatial awareness kind of gets better. But people with dementia, their spatial awareness, it's almost like they go backwards. So they lose the ability to understand spatial awareness. And a lot of that relates to their driving, especially when they're driving. So they So they end up having a lot more accidents because they can't judge the distances very well. So they end up getting into a lot of different accidents because they miscalculate what they're doing. And of course, we're doing things like misplacing things on a regular basis. And to the point where they don't understand why they need them. So they'll misplace things, and for a while they'll get annoyed, and then they'll get to a point of, why do I even need it? Why should I even bother looking for it? You know, because they won't, just purely because they don't actually remember why they need to find it. I mean, if you've lost your keys, your phone, your purse, your wallet, and you don't actually understand why you need to find it, you don't understand the reason why you need to find it, why it's so important to you, that's got to be pretty scary, you know. And of course, then you get things like moods and personality changes. And mood and personality changes are rapid, and their mood swings are interchangeable. They're quick, and anybody who's been around anybody who has very extreme mood swings will understand what that means. So anyone who lives with somebody who's bipolar, or anybody else who has extreme mood swings, will understand what this is. So they can be really happy, really content, really kind of 1 minute, and in the next they'll feel really kind of confused. They'll even feel really suspicious of the people around them, for no reason. And in some people, they'll feel really kind of outgoing, uninhibited, things like that. And finally, we get things like a loss of initiative. So, which again is pretty inexplicable. It's actually becoming uninterested in all activities they love. You know, if they've always loved doing something and then all of a sudden they just don't want to do it, hate it, don't want any interest in it, have nothing to do with it, you know, that's a massive red flag. And again, sometimes, or even if you just need to push them, go on, prompt them into doing something that they like joining in with, but all of a sudden are struggling to join in with. It's like, prompt them. Those are like the biggest warning signs of somebody could have dementia. But there are a lot of symptoms, basic symptoms of dementia, which I will go through. And then we'll leave it here and I'll finish it off at the next, might have time. Okay, so biggest symptoms, they're actually set into categories, which is really helpful. So memory symptoms, we've got things like increased forgetfulness, difficulty retaining information, getting lost in places that they know. They struggle with names, especially like, and when I'm talking about names, I'm talking about the names of like friends and family, not like just random people. So, and then obviously misplacing everything. Okay. Yeah, so we've got like cognitive symptoms. Okay. Now with the cognitive symptoms, you've got things like difficulty understanding time and place. So they could end up getting up in the middle of the night just to go to work because they don't understand what time it is. They don't know where they are, what time of the day it is. So they get up at night thinking it's time to go to work, and they will get up, they will get dressed, they will think it's time to go to work. They will have difficulty choosing what to buy and paying for it when they're shopping. They will have struggles while decision making and reasoning. So they don't really have this ability to make rational decisions as the disease progresses. And like I said, there's a loss of interest in activities they love, as well as a restlessness. So they will pace, they will fidget. They just don't like being indoors. So they try to leave the house a lot. They spend a lot of time trying to get out. Yeah. So, which is fine, I suppose. But if they have a tendency to get lost, a tendency to panic while they're outside, unless they can go out with somebody, it's safer for them to be indoors. That's to say they should never go out, but it's safer for them to be outside with other people so they don't get lost, they don't get confused, and they don't panic while they're outside. So for those with dementia that are constantly trying to get outside, it's better for them to only go out with other people. Not to lock them up indoors, but to just be out with others so that they're not alone when they go out, because if they're getting lost, if they're getting confused, if they're panicking when they're going out, anything could happen to them. Nobody wants them to get hurt, So we then get things like communication issues. So listen to this, we're almost done, yay. So we've got things like struggling to find the right words. Like I said, that's hard, that's difficult. It's not easy when they don't know what words they're trying to find. Trying to explain that word can work sometimes, but sometimes that's not so easy. And we all know what language is like. Sometimes it's really easy to explain a word, and sometimes it's not so easy to explain a word, if that makes sense. They will repeat themselves constantly because they don't always remember they've said something. They have difficulty initiating a conversation or following conversations. They will, however, they'll lose the ability to read and write. So if they were really good at reading and writing, as the disease progresses, that ability will disappear. So they will become quieter, more withdrawn. They will lose interest in socialising. They will have a loss of confidence and a change in personality and behaviour. And obviously mood swings, very rapid mood swings, things like anxiety and depression as well. Also, depending on what type of dementia they have, you could have, depending on how it deteriorates, they could also have hallucinations, like visual hallucinations, sleep disorders, movement issues, muscle tremors, balance issues, incontinence, problems with eating and swallowing, and imposter syndrome. Now, when I say imposter syndrome, I mean they don't have imposter syndrome. They think that their family and friends are imposters, and that's a lot to do with the hallucinations that they're having. They believe that their family and friends have been replaced with imposters. So that can happen as well, depending on which type of dementia they've been diagnosed with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it here. I thought we'd have a lot more time. I could... no, I'll finish this tomorrow because the diagnosis can... no, I can finish this. Might be able to finish this. Okay. You can do this in 5 minutes. Okay. To get a diagnosis, you have to see your doctor first because they need to do a general health check. They need to do a memory evaluation on you, do a memory test on you. So what they'll do it's best to go with somebody else. So you don't go alone to the doctor appointments. You must go with someone else. You will talk about your symptoms and your general health. They want you to talk about things like how you manage everyday tasks, personal care, things like cooking, shopping, and paying the bills. They will need to know about all of that. They will talk to the person you've brought with you as well, because they will want to know what they have observed about your mood changes, changes in behaviour, memory issues that they've noticed as well about you, and any things like depressions or anxieties. And then what they will do is they will run things like blood tests, stool samples, urine tests, because they need to know if there's any other medical issue that could realistically have anything to do with why you're feeling like this or why these symptoms are happening. Okay? Because a medical reason could be the reason for a wide range of the symptoms that cause dementia. If, however, they have ruled out all of that, they will then send you to a dementia specialist. This could be either a psychiatrist, a neurologist, or just an elderly care specialist. They will then order a more in-depth memory test. You will probably get a CT scan or an MRI. And if you are given a diagnosis, they will give you will be told what type of dementia you have. They will explain your symptoms and how they will progress. The treatments that are available to you personally. They will give you information on how to contact a healthcare worker. You will then be assigned a healthcare worker. You will get information for care and support services, voluntary centres, even advocacy services. You'll be told how it will affect your work life, even your driving. You might have to notify the DVLA, and you'll be told how to get financial and legal advice. And then they'll give you an entire advice leaflet on what dementia actually is and how it works. That's how that works. That is how your diagnosis and that information works. There's no cure for dementia at all, but there are medications that they use to help suppress it, and now I can't pronounce all of these medications, but there are a few that they do use, as well as things like cognitive stimulation therapies and cognitive rehabilitations. They do use those as well to help people if they feel they need it. But the medications they use will change as your dementia progresses. So they'll probably start you on things like donepezil, donepezil, DONEPEZIL. Can't pronounce it, but there you go. And there's a couple of others that I can't pronounce as well. As it progresses, you'll then be put on memantine, which is MEMANTINE. There were a couple of others on there as well, but I couldn't pronounce them either. And yeah, they're massive and they're really long words. And yeah, so there's a lot of different things that they won't do. There's a few things that they do, and that is all the basic information of dementia. So like I said, there is a hell of a lot more out there. Yeah. And I shall leave you guys to it. I'll speak to you later. Bye.